Okay, so sir has already joined. Good evening, participants. Am I audible, Ashish?
Yes, ma'am. Audible.
Okay, so I'm visible also in 2 minutes. Uh, so we can see sir has joined and we are about
Yes,
to
ma'am.
start. Good evening, dear participants and our session experts, Dr. Amitabh Vikram Dwivedi and Mr. Gaurav Saxena. I welcome you all on the day third of AICTE-ATAL Online Faculty Development Program entitled Preserving Local Dialect Using Multi-layer Perceptron for Sustainable Development of Communities. Today we are going to have two sessions, that is session number 5 and session number 6. Session number 5 will be delivered by Dr. Amitabh Dwivedi, who is Associate Professor in SMVDU. Without taking much ado, I would like to introduce and welcome Dr. Amitabh Vikram Dwivedi, and for that I would like to invite Dr. Neetu Sharma to do the honor. Neetu ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening to all of you. I am delighted to introduce and invite Dr. Amitabh Vikram Dwivedi for technical session on dialect and national heritage. It is a pleasure that Dr. Amitabh has accepted our invitation for this session. Dr. Amitabh Vikram Dwivedi is a Harvard University certified expert in the art of writing and public speaking and serves as a faculty member in the School of Languages and Literature at Sri Mata Vaishno Devi University, India. His academic expertise spans the fields of linguistics and literature, with a special focus on language documentation, the development of descriptive grammar, and the preservation of endangered and minority languages in South Asia. He has designed and taught numerous courses for prestigious academic institutions and online platforms, including Udemy and Academia. His notable courses include academic writing, analyzing text, introduction to literary criticism and theory, understanding syntax, literary criticism and theory, stylistic and literary text analysis, theory and practices. Dr. Dwivedi is a recognized scholar and his research on the Bhadravahi language is prominently featured on the official website of the UNESCO Atlas of the World's Languages in Danger. His published works are housed in the libraries of prestigious institutions, including Stanford University and Princeton University. Dr. Dwivedi's extensive academic contributions include over 180 research chapters in leading academic resources such as EBSCO and encyclopedias published by Springer Nature, Sage, Roman, and Littlefield, and ABC Silo publication. He has also authored numerous papers for Science, Citation Index, and Scopus journals. In addition to his individual research, Dr. Dwivedi served as a co-director for the research project titled A Comprehensive Study of Culture, Philosophy, Literature and Language of Jammu and Kashmir, sanctioned by the Indian Council of Social Research, Social Science Research. From April 2024 to November 2024, Dr. Dwivedi held the position of Head Information and Language Technology at the Central Institute of Hindi, Agra, Uttar Pradesh. In this role, he led key initiatives aimed at integrating information technology into the preservation and promotion of language resources. His scholarly publications include several authoritative books, notably A Grammar of Sarasi, Dogri and its Dialect, A Grammar of Hadori, A Grammar of Bhadravahi, The Dry Leaf of the Chinar Tree, and many more. As a poet, he has contributed extensively to numerous anthologies, journals, and magazines worldwide. His poem Mother was recently featured.
Neetu ma'am, your audio stopped.
Dr. Dwivedi continues to make substantial contributions to the academic and literary world. Ma'am, may I audible now?
Yes, ma'am. Audible.
Okay. Dr. Dwivedi continues to make substantial contributions to the academic and literary world with a particular commitment to the preservation and study of South Asia's linguistic and cultural heritage. With this note, I welcome again to Dr. Dwivedi, sir, for this session. Now, mic is over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Neetu ma'am, for
Thank
your
you, sir.
kind introduction, and I welcome all the participants who have joined me here in this session. And as you know, that the title of my presentation is on dialect and national heritage, and I have prepared one presentation as well, so that it will make my presentation more comprehensive. I am sharing the slide with you. Mm, Wait a minute. I hope you are seeing the slides.
Yes, sir.
Yes, yes.
So this is the title of my presentation, Dialect and
Okay.
National Heritage. And I'll be talking about various issues which are associated with preserving and saving dialects and how various languages and dialects which are associated with the national heritage. To start with, there is always a conflict, or you can say there is always these two terms which are a matter of concern for a working linguist and anthropologist, that what is the difference between language and the dialect. Some people say that language is a standard and dialect is a non-standard form of the same language. But there is one social linguist, Marx Wellrich, and he has defined this tussle between language and dialect in a very catchy statement. And what he said, a language is a dialect with an army and navy. So with this metaphor from the battlefield of army and navy, this example focuses on a couple of things. That army and navy refers to the political and social influences that we have with the language, whereas dialects are less privileged. So, in a way, we can say language is also a dialect, or we can say that all dialects are, in fact, languages. So, it is just a matter of political and social influence of powerful people or economically well to do people, and when they decide that such and such dialect is to be converted into language, then a particular dialect become a language. So this is a quip, an intelligent humor in this statement that we find, and this is also required in order to understand the future slides of this presentation. So we have this understanding now that there is no much difference between language and dialect. The thing is that certain dialects are more privileged, more prestigious, um, constitutionally authorized, so those dialects are considered to be language. Now we just move our attention to the NEP 2020, and there are 21 fundamental principles listed in the new education policy 2020. And when we look at the ninth fundamental principle, and I'm reading it, the new education policy 2020 is guided by 21 fundamental principles, out of which the ninth principle states that in order to facilitate teaching and learning, multilingualism and the power of language are to be utilized. So, this is a win win situation when we take into consideration the Indian scenario where we have many languages, though only 22 languages are constitutionally recognized. But the important point is that new education policy 2020, or national education policy we can say, focuses on the power of language and multilingualism. So we are taking multilingualism not as a problem for a country like India, but we are taking multilingualism as a blessing, as a boon, and we try to utilize how this language resources is to be used adequately. So when we try to find out what is the scientific basis of this multilingualism, and as the people who drafted the draft of the National Education Policy 2020, when they use this phrase, the power of language, so it is not something out of emotion, but a very scientific basis we have. And one such applied linguist, Cook, calls multilinguals multi-competent. When we know that multilingual is a person who can use more than one language efficiently. We also have a term bilingual, but generally when we look at the Indian scenario, we find people, they are not only bilinguals but they are multilingual as well. So how this multilingualism can be used in in our classrooms, in the teaching learning setting environment, that is also the concern. Incidentally, when we talk about multilingualism or multilinguals, then there is also one term that is known as a polyglot. But multilingualism is a more formal jargon rather than the polyglot that we use. So we now consider that uh, in a classroom where students and teachers who are multilingual, there is one mother tongue, and there are other tongues which are either second language or third language. So how this is to be utilized, or which language will become the mode of instruction, or which language will become let's say a medium of higher education. So all such things are uh, chiefly the concerns of national education policy. So we will see what national education policy says. So it says that wherever possible, the medium of instruction until at least grade 5, but preferably till grade 8 and beyond, will be the home language or mother tongue or local language or regional language. So this is mentioned under the point 4.11, and the interesting thing is home language oblique mother tongue, local language, regional language. So there is no very fixed criterion that only this particular language can be used for the grades between 5 and 8. So we have like options, these obliques, like it can be home language can be your mother tongue, or local language, or the regional language. Then the next point is teachers will be encouraged to use a bilingual approach, including bilingual teaching learning materials with those students whose home language may be different from the medium of instruction. So again, there is a flexibility that even if you are teaching English literature, and if you consider that a bilingual approach is more prominent, or the bilingual approach is going to be beneficial for my student, that you can use. And other than that, high quality textbooks, including in science, will be made available in home language mother tongue. So it implies that there will be a facility of translation, or certain institutes will be established that will translate high quality textbooks chiefly for the sciences and social sciences. Now, when we talk about multilingualism, and one language that is your mother tongue, or in technical term we call it first language, or the other languages which can be your second language or third language, or sometimes it can be a foreign language, then these two technical terms in applied linguistics, they come into being. That is the acquisition versus learning. Now, when we look at this term, there is a possibility that many times we use them as a synonym of each other. But in fact, acquisition is associated with mother tongue and first language acquisition, whereas when it comes to learning, it is associated with the second language or the third language. And according to another applied linguist, Lenneberg, the language that one acquires before puberty falls under the acquisition area, and the language that you learn after puberty that falls under the learning area. So, when we talk about acquisition, then generally mother tongues, home languages, local languages, and regional languages they fall under acquisition. So, a first language emerges without any direct instruction, and uh, when you notice a baby or a kid, then you find like the first language is acquired without any conscious effort. But when it comes to the second language, then we find that it is actively learned, studied, and practiced. So, in a scenario, in an environment where many languages are spoken, um, you can think of a parent, like the husband is Gujarati and let's say the mother is South Indian, and both are working in Bangalore, and let's say the South Indian one is from Tamil and in Bangalore is in Kannada. So you can think of the environment where local or regional language is Kannada and the mother's first language is Tamil, or the father's first language is Gujarati, and then the mode of instruction is in English in some school. So you can think of that a child is growing up in such an environment and picking up all those four languages at a very same time. So, children pick up languages extremely quick. And according to one hypothesis that is known as critical period hypothesis, proposed by Penfield and Roberts and popularized by Lenberg in their book Biological Foundations of Language, it claims that there is an ideal time window to acquire language in linguistically rich environment. So as I mentioned, like before puberty, you can acquire any language, or a child can acquire any language, but when it comes to learning you need to put conscious effort when you try to learn it. And when it comes to the eighth schedule of the Constitution of India, though we claim and boast that India is or India has a rich heritage of many languages, but unfortunately only 22 languages are listed in the constitutions. And there will be a major effort from both the central and state governments to invest in large number of language teachers. So all languages mentioned in the eighth schedule of the Constitution of India, they are going to be the part of the syllabuses across different Indian states. And these languages are Assamese, Bengali, Gujarati, Hindi, Kannada, Kashmiri, Konkani, Malayalam, Manipuri, Marathi, Nepali, Uriya, Punjabi, Sanskrit, Sindhi, Tamil, Telugu, Urdu, Bodo, Santhali, Maithili, and Jogri. Now, when you look at these 22 languages, then obviously, and when you look at the Indian map, you find that there are certain states where there is no specific mother tongue. But is it the case? So when it comes to language of Rajasthan, though there are uh, various dialects of Rajasthani, if we take Rajasthani as an umbrella term, for example, I come from the Hadoti region, so Hadoti is one such language. Then when you talk about the Jodhpur, then Dhundari is one such language. Then you have Mewari, Marwari, then you have Bagdi, Wagdi. Fine. So you have different dialects of that one umbrella Rajasthani language, but there is no mention of those languages in the eighth schedule. So that is one thing. And when it comes to Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh, it is like a sweeping statement. We are taking these states as if they are Hindi speaking states. But even when you try to find out, you will find that in various districts inside these states, you will find various fine dialects of the Hindi language. So the concern is how to save those dialects, how to document those dialects, and that I will discuss in the next part of this presentation. So I just moved to the next part of this presentation. That is how to save, how to save your uh, the national heritage that we call the dialects or the language. So we have one field in linguistics that is known as field linguistics, and we take the perspective of descriptivism. So we have two perspectives. So basically, perspective is the view through which we look at anything. So here, when we look at language, so our lens is the descriptive lens. It is not the prescriptive lens. So prescriptivism is like strictly a grammar school where you need to learn what to do with a particular language and what you should not do. So it's like a list of rules. So if you follow those rules, your sentence will be grammatical, and if you do not follow those sentences, your sentence will not be grammatical. But this descriptive linguistic fieldwork approach is very different from this prescriptivism, because prescriptivism is generally a purist. Uh, they don't allow any language vulgarism. Uh, at the same time, they are more focused on writing the language rather than the spoken one. But when it comes to the descriptive linguistic fieldwork, then our focus is on the spoken one. So it reminds me of Farinand Saussure, who is popularly known as the founder of modern linguistics. In his book published in 1916, Course in General Linguistics, he said one thing that spoken is primary and writing secondary. So when it comes to think about a language, then spoken comes first, then the writing part. So our descriptive linguistic fieldwork is focused on the spoken part. And when you talk about or when you think about dialects, then most of the dialects, they are not written, they are not documented. And it is my work, my bread and butter, because as a field linguist, I work on saving lesser known languages and dialects across the Indian subcontinent. But even when we talk about descriptive linguistic fieldwork, then again we have two approaches. So one approach is the romantic conception, uh, and again in romantic conception we have immersion versus interview. So what is the difference between this romantic conception of and the immersion versus interview? So we have different field linguists like Everett, and what Everett says, he says that in a descriptive linguistic fieldwork, we systematically analyze parts of a language other than one's native language within a community of speaker of that language, prototypically in their native land. So, as a field linguist, you just move from your, let's say, home to uh, the speaker's land, and particularly that is not your own native land, and you move there. You not only move there, you stay there. You make friends with those people, and you live there for months and years, and you document their language. So this is like a very romantic conception and you are free from all the worries of the world, like you do not have any work else to do but to document a language, document a culture. So that's why it is a romantic conception that you immerse in that new environment and you become like them. Fine. Then we have another uh, by Foley. The ideal way to study the language of a traditional community is living with the village, learning as much as of the social customs of the people as possible. So that means you need to dress like them, you need to eat like them, you need to be like them. And Eichenwald linguistic fieldwork ideally involves observing the language as it is used, becoming a member of a community. That means like if there is a possibility, then you become the member of the community. So you will become someone's brother, someone's sister, and like if there is a possibility, then even certain field linguists they become spouses from that particular community. So we had those examples as well. So being adopted into the kingship system. So this is very romantic conception, and we know that this is not technically possible. So we have this another approach that is the interview approach. So what is this interview approach by Hyman and Samarian? What they say, so they agree with the previous definition. So it is not the case like they are simply against with that definition, but they would agree that bringing the native speakers out of his or her environment to another location is also a possibility. So let's say I am of Hyman and Samarian side. So instead of just going or leaving my place and just establishing kinship relations or just living with that community, it is better for me to invite a native speaker to my place, to my office, to my home, and collect the data. Similarly, Cowley says that holds that ideal field work is in the community. So he says like, okay, ideal field work is the best, but he also accepts the possibility of field work at home. So we have this romantic conception. It is known as the dirty feet approach, and the another one, the interview one, is the armchair approach. So basically, when I try to define myself that what type of field linguist I am, then I am an armchair field linguist. So I invite those native speakers to my office, to my home. I collect data. I sit with them for months, so daily 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hours, and I collect data and then I analyze the grammar, and that's the way how I document. And most of the field linguists they do the same. So what do we do basically? So we have now let's say a native speaker who is sitting in our office, and we are interviewing that native speaker. So we do a lot of things. First thing we do, we collect data for the purpose of documentation and description of a language. Data collection through interaction with the speakers, data collection in situation where speakers are expected to use the language naturally. So one thing that we need to take into consideration, that data must not be constructed. So it is not artificially constructed. So it is not the case like we are just having an English grammar book, and we are just enumerating those sentences of English grammar and asking like, okay, this is one sentence in English or this is one sentence in Hindi. How will you say this sentence in Dogri? How will you say this sentence in Badarwai? So that is not the thing. The thing is like speakers are expected to use the language naturally. So instead we will just ask like, okay, you tell me about yourself, any happy incidents that you have in your lifetime. So once they start narrating that thing, we can record it with their permission and we transcribe them. So you can see that once you narrate something, then you use different type of sentences. So it is not like when you are narrating something, you are only using declarative sentence or only interrogative. So it is a mixture of different sentences. So sometimes you use declarative, imperative, exclamative, negative. So a lot of sentences you use. At the same time, once you are in a narration, then very often you switch your tenses. So you switch from, let's say, past to present, present to future, then future to present, present to past. So in a way, listening to a story, listening to a narration, recording a narration is the best way to collect the data. Then what is the relationship between documentary and descriptive goals of field work? So, according to Himmelman and Lehman, consider documentation and description to be theoretically independent. So, data collection is one thing, and describing that data is another thing. So here we are talking about that thing that okay, you have had with you have had sessions with the native speaker, so you have documented something. But once the documentation is over, what you will do with that data? You need to describe it. So whether there is a link between those two activities, So again, there are certain field linguists, they present their views. So Himalman and Lehman, they say no, they are independent theoretically, and documentation should have priority as the goal of the fieldwork activity. Then Woodbury considers documentation and description to be theoretically independent, but considers documentation and description to have equal priority as the goal of the fieldwork activity. Then Dixon and Cross consider documentation and description to be theoretically dependent. So again, as you can, so Dixon is a big name, Cross is also a big name. So they consider like they are dependent upon each other. And when we look at them, then we understand it is important because once you have documented the data, you need to describe. And if there is no data, then what you will describe? So that way they are theoretically dependent, and you describe, uh, and that is the goal of the fieldwork activity. So what type of data do we have, or what type of data do we document? So we have word data, sentence data, discourse data, and integration of the above. So that means integration of word, sentence, and discourse. So under documentary, you have word recordings, sentence recording, text recording, and descriptives. So how word recording uh, will become descriptive when it becomes the part of a dictionary. How sentence recording becomes descriptive when you analyze those sentences with examples. How text recording becomes descriptive when you analyze the text and you write reference grammars. So in a way, you can see that what is the relationship between the two, how one is dependent upon the another, and the documentary is prior to description. So further, saving language again, you can do for various purposes. So saving language, we use different terminology. We use saving language. We use saving indigenous cultures. You can use documenting indigenous languages and cultures. But we also have these three terms. One is known as language revitalization. Second one is language renewal, and third one is language reclamation. So again, you should be very much sure what is your goal. So if your goal is language revitalization, then in this situation where the linguistic field worker can help with taking stock of the existing documentation and can add to it. So that means like in language revitalization, re prefix we are using before the vitalization. That means there are speakers and you are simply adding more to the stock of existing documentation. But when it comes to language renewal, then the prefix re is coming before the newal. So in this situation where the linguistic field worker can help people jog their memories, that means there is no data, but speakers are still alive. Old speakers are there, so you can just ask them to think about certain phrases, certain proverbs, certain aphorisms, or if they talk in their language, then you can listen to their stories, you can jot down their stories. So this is another way. And third one is language reclamation. That means language is dead. So in this situation where field workers can be of no direct help, that means like at present no one is speaking the language, but you have certain documentations or certain materials in like museums. So nothing of the language is remembered, and the materials of relearning the language have to be based on historical documents. So uh, that is again the third type of. So most of the time, field linguists in the present scenario they are working on the language revitalization, and there are some like Everett they are working on the language renewal. So it's also when we start our study, we must know that a particular dialect or language falls under which family. So we can see that South Asian languages families. So you have Indo-Aryan languages. So you can see Indo-Aryan is the largest one. Then Iranian languages, then Nuristani languages, Dravidian languages, Austro-Asian languages, Tibeto-Burman, and unclassified. So there is some unclassified also, but you can see that the largest one is the Indo-Aryan one. and then you have the Dravidian one in the blue, as you can see. So this way, the map will also help you, or you can also place that particular dialect or language in the map. Further, you can also have this graphical representation. So here we have the graphical representation of Proto-Indo-European. So Indo-Iranian, and under Indo-Iranian you can see Indic. Under Indic you have Sanskrit, and then you have Hindi, Bengali, Gujarati. So that is, then you have Iranian also. So Iranian is like you have Farsi, Kurdish, Old Persian. Then again, now what is this Proto? Proto-Indo-European. Proto is like an assumed great grandmother. So when we consider the present day languages and we try to find out like what would be, because we know that these languages are interlinked and interconnected to each other. So as you can see, that Proto-Indo-European is like one great grandmother of all the languages. Then under you have certain daughters, like Indo-Iranian is one daughter, Hellenic is one daughter, Celtic is one daughter, Italic, Baltic, Slavic is another daughter, and Germanic is another daughter. And then you have further daughters, then the sisters as well. So you can say that Hindi and Bengali are sisters, and then Hindi Urdu are also sisters, or Hindi Gujarati are also sisters in a way. In this, considering this, so similarly, if you take into consideration, because English is a Germanic language, so you have North Germanic, and under North Germanic you have Old Norse and Swedish, and under Old Norse you have Norwegian and Icelandic. But under West Germanic you have Anglo-Frisian, and the this if you if you ask this question like which is that language that is very close to modern day English, then the Frisian is that language that is the very close to modern English language. Otherwise, you have this Old Dutch and you have this German language. So this is also a way to locate where your language. So you can see that here a very a vast Proto-Indo-European, and from Proto-Indo-European you have Indo-Iranian, and then we have come to Indo-Iranian. So again Indo-Iranian, then Indo-Aryan. From Indo-Aryan you have Vedic Sanskrit, then Prakrit, and then the most of the languages that are spoken in let's say Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, they are from uh, Prakrits. Fine. So you have different type of Prakrits. For example, Marathi has been derived from uh, Maharashtri Prakrit, and let's say you have Magadhi Prakrit as well. So these are the Prakrits, and why they are called Prakrits? Because Prakrit is a word that is associated with Prakriti, right? So something that is natural. So language that is natural is not classical. So there is always a debate that Sanskrit is a classical one, but when Sanskrit was spoken once upon a time, there were also those dialects. They were known as the Prakrits, in fact, and from those Prakrits of different type of Prakrits like Gandhari, Maharashtri, Sursheni, like all the Rajasthani are from, or Hindi is from Sursheni Prakrit, then Magri. So this type of classification is also important for us as a field linguist to locate that where my language. So it is like a family, like who is your father, who is your grandfather, who is your great grandfather. Then like okay, uh, which rishi, like so descendant from which rishi. So that type of thing is again we have here with languages. So now coming to languages of Jammu and Kashmir. So because some of my work documented languages spoken in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. So the languages spoken in the Jammu and Kashmir region, they also fall under Indo-Aryan. So Indo-Aryan itself is a very big family. So again, Indo-Aryan has further division, sub-branches like inner, mediate, and outer. So under inner, you have Pahadi and central. So again, you can see that under Pahadi also you have further division, Western Pahadi, Central Pahadi, Eastern Pahadi. And you can see that a red font. So these are my area. Like I have worked on the Bhadarwai, Siraji, Dogri, Gujri, Saruri, Bhalesi. So these are the languages that are spoken in Jammu and Kashmir region. So similarly, you have central one. So the languages that are spoken in the Himachal Pradesh, they fall under central one, and the languages that are near to the Nepal, that is the eastern one. So similarly, that central is there, then mediate, and then outer one. So this is how you can go through top bottom. You can follow top bottom approach or top down or bottom up approach. So it is better to follow the top down approach. So you start with the proto Indo European, then go to your Indo Aryan, then go sorry Indo Iranian, then go to Indo Aryan, and then Prakrit and Vish Prakrit, and then the specific language. So let's say you are working on a dialect and you have selected the region. So you need to be more specific about that region, that what are the adjacent regions and which languages are spoken in the adjacent area. That is also important. So it is not the case like, okay, I am concerned about Bhadarwai, so why should I concerned about Bhalesi, Saraji, Dogri? No, you need to give the representation of all such. So here, as you can see, this is the map of Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir, and as you can see, there are certain numberings as well. So these are basically the regions, or you can say districts. So Saruri is spoken in one district, Bhadarwai is 8, Bhalesi is in 8 and 10, Saraji is 9 and 8, Dogri is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That means these 5 districts, adjacent districts where Dogri is spoken. Then Gujri is 6, 11, 17, 19, 20. So where the Gujar community lives, the Gujri language is spoken. And interestingly, I worked on the Gujri language, and the Gujri that is spoken in Jammu and Kashmir is very close to the Hadoti when it comes to the inflection markers or certain words that are there. Because in Rajasthan we have also the Gujar community that we have, and there is a possibility that the Gujars that are living in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir must have been migrated from Rajasthan once upon a time. These are my work, published work, like the Dogri and dialects, then Bhadarwai and Saraji. So these are the representation of the districts. So I have mentioned like Hindi and Dogri, they are spoken in Kathua, Jammu, Samba. Then Udhampur and Riyasi Dogri, then Rajouri, Gojri and Pahadi, Punchi and Pahadi, then Doda district, Bhadarwai and Saraji. So this is not absolute. So it is not the case like you will say, okay, I met one person from Udhampur and he was speaking Hindi language and you have not mentioned. So this is not the case. It is like by and large view that I want to give. So in Ramban, Saraji and Pongli, Ishtwari. So that means like majority of people, what majority of people they speak. Ishtwar, Kishtwari, then in Anantnag, Burushaski. So likewise, so you have in Kargil, Ladakhi and Shina, in Kupwara, Khoistani and Pashtu, Baramula Pashtu, then Bandipura, Pashtu and Shina, Ganderbal, Khoistani. So I'm not saying like in Ganderbal people are not speaking Kashmiri. There are people, but I just want to specify that that particular language is spoken. That particular language is spoken by the people who live in these districts. So in Srinagar, Kashmiri and Burushaski, Badgam, Burushaski, Shopian, Pashtu, Pulwama, Urdu and Kashmiri, Kulgam, Kashmiri. Likewise, and as I said, like this table is not absolute. That means you can add and subtract, modify. So we can do all the time because we know that language is always evolving like human beings. So as human beings evolve each day, similarly we have constant changes in the
Excuse me,
language.
sir.
Yes.
Pardon to interrupting you, sir. There is one question from Raghavendra Sharma ji. Are these languages or local dialect?
Uh, as I said in the initial part of my presentation, that as a linguist we do not make a distinction between language and dialect. Languages are dialects, dialects are languages. It is a matter of political decision that makes language dialect, dialect language. So here in linguistics, generally we take into consideration major language and minor language, and it depends upon the number of speakers that we have. So basically, we do not fall trap of this debate that particular language is a dialect or a language, but we will come into that thing linguistically as well in the future slides as well. So again, coming back to the debate of language versus dialect, and what Max Wenrich once said, that a language is a dialect with an army and a navy. So that means like it is the political will or the social influence, or if the speakers are economically, politically well to do, then they pressurize governments to make their dialect a language. So in 2004, Dogri became a language. So you think about the 2003 and 2002. So that means like what happened suddenly? All of a sudden, what happened that in 2004 Dogri became a language, and what happened in 2003? So this is the thing. Otherwise, there was and there is a general consideration that Dogri is a dialect of Punjabi, in a way that Dogri speakers they understand Punjabi, Punjabi speakers they understand Dogri. So that way, generally, as a working field linguist, we do not fall trap of this debate that why particular language is a dialect or why particular language is a, a, a dialect. But still, in order to give a convincing answer that what makes dialect or what makes a language language, then there is a test. And there are two tests, in fact. One is mutual intelligibility. So according to mutual intelligibility test, that two mutually intelligible varieties of the same language can be understood by speakers of each variety. So if there is one variety and 80% of words or 85% of words are same, then they will eventually be mutually intelligible because of the lexical similarity we have. So lexical similarity can be used to evaluate the degree of genetic relationship between two languages. So percentage or percentages higher than 85% usually indicate that the two languages being compared are likely to be related dialects. So you have a list of words, let's say in language A, and you have list of words in language B. So those lists of words, that means like you have at least 500 words in language A and in language B. And when you discover after documentation that language A and language B has more than 85% words same, then you can very easily say that they are in fact no, they are in fact not two different languages, but they are in fact the dialects of the same language. So with lexical similarity, you can say this thing. And there are certain standard tests. One such test is by Blair, and in that text, but in order to apply the Blair test, you must have a good knowledge of phonetics and phonology. There, you need to find out the consonants, initial consonants, if initial consonants are same, or let's say the same type of vowel sounds that are there. So that way you apply that test and you try to find out whether two languages are same languages or they are different one. And when you start working on a dialect or a language, then you start with finding out the basic word order. So basic word order is a declarative sentence. So what would be the declarative sentence? For example, John loves Mary is the basic word order of the English language. So the subject verb object. But if you ask what is the basic word order of Hindi language, then it becomes subject, object, and verb. So similarly, as you can see here, I have listed, and why I have listed in such a fashion, because I would like to show you the similarity and differences of words that we have. So here you have these 7 languages or dialects, because officially only two are the languages. Dogri and Kashmiri are considered languages because they are the part of Constitution 8th schedule of the Constitution of India, and rest of them are not listed. But for me, all are languages, or for me, all are dialects. So you can see the difference. The major differences of word order. So starting from Bhatarwai, Saraji, Saruri, Bhalesi, Gujri, and Dogri. All these 6 are SOV, that means subject, object, and verb, like Hindi. But when it comes to Kashmiri, then it is like English. The basic word order is subject, verb, and object. So here you need to understand the difference. Like we have like a one sentence, Ram eats food. So you can see that Ram is same, but again there is little variation. So you send roti, roti, and here like in Gujri and Dogri, that is the different. The row is longer one, fine. And again roti and roti. So it is like double ta. That difference is also there. You can see that double ta is there in Bhadarwai, Saraji, Saruri, Bhalesi. So that minute difference you need to find out. But in Gujri and Dogri, you can say uh, there is no, there is single ta. Then again, when you look at the auxiliary in the last, so Ram Roti Khato Aaye in Bhadarwai, in Sita, sorry, in Saraji it becomes roti kha cho. In Saruri it becomes khathu. Then in Bhalesi khato a. In Gojri it is khato a. Then in Dogri khanda a. Fine. So you can see, you can sense that how field linguists work. So this is just one one example, and you can see that Kashmiri is very different. So it is like Ram thu khev sut. Fine. So it's like very different from the rest of the. So this you also do. Then what else you can do? You can document language. You can also document proverbs. So here you can see that there are certain proverbs, and you can select some model to categorize those proverbs. So here I have structured them like this. So what is structure one? If X then Y. So hat na I thu kodi. Fine. So if something doesn't come in hand, spit at it. So in English equivalent is sour grapes. Then better X than Y. Chor kola pand kali. Fine. So put the cart before the horse. Then chai beta. So one has to compromise one's personal desire to feed the family. So either stomach or son. Pind peyani mangte pehle. So the village is not yet inhabited, but the beggars have come. So don't count your chickens before they hatch. So again, you can see that how I have listed them. So generally we follow this IPA. IPA is an abbreviation for International Phonetic Alphabet. And International Phonetic Alphabet we use to document these languages. But the question arises that why we use International Phonetic Alphabet, because even a person who is living in Germany, and if the person is a linguist, then the person can read and understand IPA. So that's why first we write our data in IPA, then we provide word-to-word transcription, and then we provide the literal translation, and then we provide the actual or equivalent translation. So that way You can also work on the proverbs. Fine. Likewise, or if you do not follow this type of model like X positive, Y negative, or either X or Y, then you can follow other type of. So you can categorize them under, let's say, the animals, proverbs associated with animals, proverbs related to insects. So here we have not followed IPA, but in the Devanagari we have written, so ऊंट दे गल टल बनना, so incompatible match. Then पिस्सू पे ही जाना, to have doubts in mind. Fine. So you have तीतर हो ही जाना, to run very swiftly. चिड़िया मिंदनिया, to oppress powerless people. Fine. घोड़ा बनाना, fine, to be submissive. कुत्ते दी नाड़ होना, to be insolent like a dog. So likewise, you can collect in that fashion also. So you can categorize them, classify them. You can classify them according to profession, according to caste, according to religion, according to animal. Fine. So there are different type of classifications that you can do. It depends upon your approach. Then you can also document the performances. So here there is one performance. So these are my students. These were my students long back. So you can see they are performing on a Dogri folk song, and the girl that is sitting in the middle, now she is a faculty at IIT Jammu, Kulin Kaur, and the other one is Kamaldeep. She is also assistant professor in some Dogri college. So the performance you can also, and you can describe that performance in your description. So performance is also a sort of documentation that you have. Also, you can have a recording of various activities. Like here, this is a farming in Bhadarwai. So you can see, like, or you can compare that the farming that is done in your region, is it the similar or it is different one. So that type of description and documentation you can also do. So that will also help, and it will help future researchers as well, and it will also help to preserve the indigenous and cultural activities which are associated with particular language and region. Then you can also have a photograph of your informants. So that is also good because people will look at them and they will try to look at like how people dress there, then whether the people living in your region they dress the same, is it different, similar. So that is also important. So thank you all of you for your patient listening, and I'd be happy to answer any questions, doubts, uh, or any feedback, any comment.
Any questions, participants? All are encouraged to ask as many questions as possible.
हेलो
प्रोफेसर अमिताभ द्विवेदी जी,
हेलो
प्रोफेसर
हेलो
अमिताभ द्विवेदी जी,
नमस्कार।
एम आई ऑडिबल?
आपका वक्तव्य विद्वत्तापूर्ण, अप्रतिम, बहुत प्रभावी रहा है और बहुत कुछ सीखने को मिला है। आपको ढेर सारी मनःपूर्वक हार्दिक शुभेच्छा।
बहुत धन्यवाद
सर। रियली बहुत अच्छा सेशन था। इट्स रियली वेरी नाइस।
हेलो
Wonderful session, Amitabh sir. I have one question. Like, you talked about so many things. You talked about how dialogue can be performed and other things. And we can make a comparative study, which is a wonderful thing that we can even like, when I'm moving from, like, even in Rajasthan, we have Dundadi, Marwadi, Mewadi and the languages. So we can also do a comparative study. So now my question arises here that do we have these, are we are working on this preservation of dialect because we need to preserve it? So is the work has been started, or we have to now we have to hand or bang on technologies to restore these dialects or make a comparative analysis? I would like to want to ask you, what is your views on that?
So, when it comes to the various dialects spoken in the Rajasthan region, then most of the dialects have been documented. And there is one US professor, and he is in constant touch with me. His name is Professor Lakhan Gusai, and he is a very senior professor, and he has been residing there for past 24 years. But he has worked and documented most of the dialects that you have mentioned. One I have worked on the Haroti one, but he has documented all those. But that documentation is not very extensive. Even my work is not very extensive. So there is always a scope to work on or to revisit those field sites and work on those dialects and languages. And when it comes to the comparative one, then that will be a really new and a novel study if anyone can undertake that work. So you can just look at first of all the existing documentation that will help you to have a comparative work to be done in future. So that is the way, because from the scratch it is very difficult to document or to compare all the dialects or languages that are in the Rajasthan region. So the better thing is look at the existing work and then try to frame some similarities or comparison. So that will be a really good work.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Anybody has any question, please, they can raise their hand or can unmute themselves, or we can
Hello.
unmute them. Yes, there's a question.
Hello. Am
Yes,
I
Dr.
audible?
Anwar. Yes, and Dr.
Uh,
Anwar, you are audible.
okay. Sir, hello, sir. This is Dr. Anwar from JECRC University. Actually, sir, I want to know means what do you think about difference between sociolect and language?
Sociolect, when we study social linguistics, so linguistics
Hmm.
is just one umbrella term. And under linguistics, we have different branches like phonetics and phonology, morphology, social linguistics, psycholinguistics. So under social linguistics, when we study, then we use these type of terminologies that are lect. So one is we use idiolect. Idiolect is individual variety. Then we use sociolect, that means social variety. We use dialect, so it is geographical variety. So this lect is again a suffix for the language variety, and we use it differently. So when you talk about sociolect, then even you can sense that the way you speak language is not the case that the people who are from, let's say, economically less privileged background they use. So when you try to trace that difference between your way of using language and the way someone who is less privileged or someone who is like a constructional worker or let's say someone who is less privileged is using, so that type of study will eventually fall under socialite or socio yes, that is the case.
No, sir, is any difference between language and sociolect? Matlab, can we mention?
This comparison is not valid
Okay.
because why I'm saying this comparison is not valid, because social act is also a type of language, a
Hmm.
variety of language, and
Hmm.
so language is like one umbrella term again. So you have different types of, the way you speak is not the case your children speak, the way you speak is not the way your wife speaks. So the thing is like that is your idiolect. So that means individual variety. So now you cannot say like there is a difference between idiolect and language. So that comparison is not valid. So under social act, you have social act one, social act two, social act three, and social act dot dot dot. That comparison is valid. You can compare one social act with another social act. But social act is also language. So what is the comparison? That is my point.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
There
So
is
there
one
is a
question.
question in the chat box, sir. You can read that question. Amitabh, sir, there's a question in the
Yes,
chat box.
Yes, let me open my message. So it's
Sir,
kindly share. Is there any book or work for research work which can be referred to study about the impact of language and dialect over the mass? So there are lots of works. So not one work, but like the impact of language and dialect. So there are a lot of like works that are related to language and gender. So immediately I cannot suggest any one title, but in general you can find many works. So language and dialect over the mass. Basically, you are talking about like how language is affecting people. So there is a concept that is associated with that is known as linguistic determinism, and in that concept, we believe that our our language decides our perception, how we perceive the world around us. So that type of work is related to if you read the work of let's say Ludwig Wittgenstein, even there is a work like Tractatus by Ludwig Wittgenstein or philosophical investigation. That type of work is also there. So there are so many works, but your question is so broad that I cannot say that this particular work will directly answer your question. So that is the case. But even if you just go to JSTOR and just type language influencing people, then even you will get lots of papers that will satisfy your need. That I can say at this juncture.
so there is
So
another
then,
question in the chat box
Okay, let me
from
open my chat.
Dr. Kiran Bhoot ma'am.
Okay, yes, one question from my side. How have neighboring languages like Gujarati, Sindhi, and Punjabi influenced specific Marwari dialects? So that you need to study because there is no one fixed answer that how. So, but particularly when we talk about one language, then basically we try to talk about the standard variety of particular language. So, for example, when I say Bhadarwai, then I'm not talking about the each variety of the Bhadarwai language. And in your question, you have mentioned that how these particular like language A, B, and C they have influenced language D. So that means you are talking about the border area cases. So people who are living in the border area and how they are in interaction with each other. So how Punjabi is influenced by Marwadi or how Sindhi is influenced by Punjabi. So that is the different case, different situation where people are living in the uh, border area. So that border area, and definitely there is influence and there is a lot of code switching and code mixing. But that is only associated with that particular people. So it is not like this phenomenon is spread throughout the language speaker. So for that you need to select a specific region, certain villages or a particular town and certain speakers who are in touch with one, two, three languages simultaneously, and then you can deduce, you can find out that what type of influence is there. So it may be influence of like the most popular or type of influence is of lexical category. That means like someone who is speaking Hindi at the same time must have borrowed certain words from Punjabi or let's say Marwadi and using them simultaneously. So that type of code switching is very popular, very frequent, or you can also say code mixing as well. So code mixing and code switching, that is that generally you will find. But what type of words that are there, it also depends upon person to person. So again, we cannot generalize this thing. But again, some sort of generalization you can make that the grammatical markers, if there is a change in the grammatical markers, or you can say the uh, yes, grammatical markers mostly, because generalization you can make on the grammatical markers, but not on the individual set of words. That I can say now.
Any other question?
Even I add one more thing, Amitabh here. I call you
Yes.
Amitabh because we belong to the same time. If I
Yes,
you
yes.
permit.
Yeah, please,
So
please.
because see, we cannot do the code mixing because now we are talking about preserving dialect. So it is our effort also to make them as pure as they are, rather than mixing them and losing their originality. It's now become our duty to make restrict ourselves to keep them original, keep them pure, and keep them intact. Right?
Um, no, no, no. This is again like a purist view, and this actually as a functional linguist or as a linguist, you generally do not be a linguistic purist. So there is one एक कबीर दास जी ने कहा था कि उन्होंने बोला था कि बोली बहता नीर है, भाषा अंधकूप। तो उन्होंने ये वाली बात इसलिए बोली थी कि जो बोली है, बोली का मतलब स्पोकन जो लैंग्वेज को हम बोली जनरली बोलते हैं, तो उन्होंने कहा था कि बोली बहता नहीं रहे, मतलब उसको बांधने की कोशिश मत करो, उसमें डूज एंड डोंट्स मत लगाओ कि ऐसा करो वैसा करो। तो फिर अगर इस तरह का करोगे तो वो लैंग्वेज एक दिन डेड लैंग्वेज हो जाएगी। तो इसका मतलब है कि उसको आप बहता नहीं रहने दो, उसको अंधकूप मत बनाओ। कुएं में क्या होता है कि हम पानी के चारों ओर एक बाउंड्री बना देते हैं और उसको कैद कर देते हैं। तो दैट इज द थिंग, जो ये प्यूरिस्ट व्यू है ये लैंग्वेज के लिए खतरनाक होता है और ये लैंग्वेज की प्रोग्रेस को रोक देता है। वैसे राइटिंग इज डूइंग द सेम थिंग। राइटिंग क्यों, जैसे हमारा स्पोकन होता है, तो राइटिंग का काम भी यही होता है कि लैंग्वेज में जो फ्रीक्वेंट चेंजेस होते हैं उसको स्टॉप कर देना। तो वो प्रैग्मेटिक व्यू से ठीक है कि भाई अगर हर साल चेंज होंगे, क्योंकि बोलने में तो चेंज होता रहता है लगातार, तो हर साल अगर चेंज होगा तो फिर दिक्कत आ जाएगी। तो राइटिंग में ये होता है कि हाँ 10 साल में एक बार चेंज हो रहा है, 50 साल में एक बार चेंज हो रहा है, या कुछ चेंजेस हो रहे हैं तो ठीक है। बट दिस प्योरिस्ट व्यू से फिर ये हो जाएगा कि एक रेस स्टार्ट हो जाएगी। फिर कुछ लोग कहेंगे कि अच्छा अच्छा फिर तो हमारी लैंग्वेज मोर सुपीरियर देन योर लैंग्वेज। फिर वो चालू हो जाएगा कि फिर तो डायलेक्ट तो फिर इंफीरियर हो गए बेचारे, उनको फिर डॉक्यूमेंट ही क्यों करो जो चीज इंफीरियर है। तो उस डिबेट में नहीं पढ़ना चाहिए हमको। हमको ये देखना चाहिए कि लैंग्वेजेस आर डायलेक्ट्स, डायलेक्ट्स आर लैंग्वेजेस। और हमको ये नहीं देखना चाहिए कि प्योरिटी मेंटेन करने वाला हमारा पर्पस नहीं है। हमारा पर्पस ये है कि स्पीकर क्या बोल रहा है उसको डिस्क्राइब करना। अगर स्पीकर बोल रहा है जिसके अंदर दो लैंग्वेजेस के वर्ड्स आ रहे हैं, तो दैट मीन्स कि बोरोइंग हो चुकी है और हमको अब यूज करना है। अब जैसे हिंदी में एक वर्ड होता है संगणक, कंप्यूटर के लिए,
True, true, true.
लेकिन कितने लोग संगणक बोलते हैं। संगणक बोलने में इतनी दिक्कत भी नहीं आएगी, लेकिन अब वो है कि आपको इजी कंप्यूटर लग रहा है तो आप कंप्यूटर बोल रहे हो। अब कंप्यूटर से जो एसोसिएट टर्मिनोलॉजी है माउस, अब कल को कोई बोले नहीं मैं तो अब इसको हिंदी में चूहा बोलूंगा, तो लोग बाग हंसने लग जाएंगे, ओके भैया चूहा क्यों बोल रहे हो, माउस ही बोल दो। तो दैट इज अ थिंग। तो प्योरिटी जैसा चीज नहीं करना चाहिए। अब रोबोटिक्स का जमाना है, एआई का जमाना है, अब एआई के कितने वर्ड्स को आप हिंदी का बनाओगे। तो बेहतर यही है कि आप बोरोइंग कर लो और सहज जो हो उसको यूज करो। अदरवाइज फिर क्या होगा कि वो पीछे छूट जाते हैं काफी सारी चीजें। दैट इज माई पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू।
No, it's wonderful because see, when the experts are talking, then only we can realize that these questions are meant for that. Sir, there's one more question from me, so please check it out. Amitabh sir, there's one more
जी जी।
question that chat box.
हाँ मैं देखता हूँ। हाँ एक क्वेश्चन है, I would like to say that the current generation feels shy in using local dialect. What do, तो ये तो सही है। ये तो एक इंडिविजुअल चॉइस होती है और ह्यूमन बीइंग्स में तो कमजोरियां होती हैं। तो आपको लगेगा कि कोई लैंग्वेज को बोलने से मुझे ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंस मिल रही है तो आप वो लैंग्वेज बोलोगे। तो अब मैं इसमें ये तो नहीं कह सकता कि भाई ऐसा क्यों कर रहे हो, बट इंडिया में ऐसा व्यू है। मेरे को बोलने में अच्छा नहीं लगता कि कोई अंग्रेजी बोले तो उसको ज्यादा इंटेलिजेंट समझा जाता है, और कोई हिंदी बोले तो उसको फिर और कम, अगर डायलेक्ट बोल दिया तो फिर बिल्कुल ही कम। सो इट डिपेंड्स अपॉन सिचुएशन। ऐसा होना नहीं चाहिए। पेरेंट्स भी कई बार होता है कि वो अपने लोकल डायलेक्ट्स को अपने बच्चों को बोलने में शर्म महसूस करते हैं, तो वो बच्चों से कहते हैं कि नॉट टॉक इन इंग्लिश, फाइन डोंट टॉक इन हिंदी और डोंट टॉक इन योर रीजनल लोकल डायलेक्ट। सो इट डिपेंड्स अपॉन सिचुएशन टू सिचुएशन। इट शुड नॉट हैपन, बट एक आइडियल सिचुएशन है कि ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए, लेकिन इसका कोई क्विक फिक्स सॉल्यूशन इनफैक्ट नहीं है। और क्यों नहीं है? क्योंकि जब हम एम्प्लॉयबिलिटी को देखते हैं तो हमको पता है कि अंग्रेजी में एम्प्लॉयबिलिटी ज़्यादा है, तो हम कहते हैं कि भैया अंग्रेजी पढ़ ले तो कुछ ना कुछ तो कर ही लेगा। अगर वही एम्प्लॉयबिलिटी आपके लोकल डायलेक्ट्स में भी आ जाएगी तो फिर जो शर्म और जो चीज़ें वो सारी चीज़ें चली जाएंगी।
Sir, there is one more question in by Vasanta P. Can you check it out? Is there one
जी
question?
एक मिनट। उन्होंने लिखा है कि माय क्वेश्चन इज देयर एनी ग्रामर वर्क डन इन लोकल लैंग्वेजेस एंड हाउ इट इज सेट फॉर लोकल डायलेक्ट्स। इस पे तो बहुत वर्क हुआ है लोकल लैंग्वेजेस पे, इंडिया की भी लोकल लैंग्वेजेस। एक आप लिंकॉम यूरोपा की जो वेबसाइट है उस पे जाइएगा, और अधिकतर लिंकॉम यूरोपा जो बुक्स है वो इन्हीं की छापता है, वो लिंग्विस्टिक्स की और एंथ्रोपोलॉजी की बुक्स ही वो छापते हैं। तो उनका लैंग्वेजेस ऑफ वर्ड मटेरियल्स करके एक सेक्शन है जिसके अंदर उन्होंने डिफरेंट लोकल डायलेक्ट्स और लैंग्वेजेस, तो आप उसमें जब जाएंगे लैंग्वेजेस ऑफ वर्ड मटेरियल्स में, तो आपको 400-500 बुक्स की लिस्ट मिल जाएगी। और उन 400-500 बुक्स की लिस्ट में आपको 50 से 60 तो इंडियन डायलेक्ट्स और लैंग्वेजेस का वर्क मिल जाएगा। तो उसमें से आप देखते जाइए, जो भी इंडियन होगा आपको एकदम से लग ही जाएगा, क्योंकि उसका ऑथर भी कोई इंडियन ही होगा, तो आप फटाफट पहचान लेंगे कि ये कोई इंडियन ही लैंग्वेज या डायलेक्ट है। मेरे भी 2-4 वर्क वहाँ लिंकॉम यूरोपा में है, तो वो भी आपको मिल जाएंगे। तो इस तरीके से बहुत वर्क हुआ है लोकल डायलेक्ट्स पे और इन लोकल लैंग्वेजेस पे, वो आपको मिल सकता है।
There is one more question in the chat box.
जी एक
I
मिनट।
hope.
द क्वेश्चन इज एनी, तो हो गया, फिर और क्या था? जनरेशन, ये तो हो गया। आई थिंक हो गए सारे क्वेश्चंस।
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. And if somebody has raised his hand, just check it out, Ashish sir. Is anybody raised his hand?
Right now, ma'am, nobody is seeing to raise hand.
Okay, so
Does anybody want to ask anything else?
is anybody has any query, any question or deliberation to make? Because sir is there with us, and we are really grateful to Amitabh sir. So making us a wonderful presentation, and you have taken up everything, left nothing. What I must say. And Ashish sir, shall we take a group photograph?
Sure, ma'am. Sure.
So we request all the participants, please turn on your cameras so that, okay, Sama ma'am has one question. Amitabh sir, we have one question
जी
from Sama ma'am. She's our HOD, Applied Sciences, and wonderful listener, and she makes
Speaker
her
as well.
question.
Speaker as
Speaker
well.
as well. Yes, ma'am, just please make her unmute. Ashish sir.
Yes, yes. So, good evening, sir. Uh, hello, I am audible.
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Yes, ma'am.
नमस्ते मैम। यस मैम, आपको सुन पा रहे हैं।
नमस्कार सर। तो आपने बहुत ही प्यारा अपना सेशन लिया था, और लैंग्वेज को लेकर आपने जितनी हार्ट टचिंग बात बोली है वो बहुत ही अच्छी बोली थी, और ऐसी बातें बोली थी जो सारे लोगों को एक साथ बहुत अच्छे से समझ में आ रही थी। सो मैं सिर्फ आपसे ये पूछना चाहती हूँ कि व्हाट इज योर पर्सनल ओपिनियन, आप एज ए मेंटोर क्या गाइड करना चाहेंगे? व्हाट शुड व्हाट we should prefer, or local language, English language, or it is as per
मेरा इसमें एक ऑनेस्ट ओपिनियन है कि पेरेंट्स को अपनी मदर टंग अपने बच्चों को इम्पार्ट करनी चाहिए। बाद में वो कोई सी भी लैंग्वेज हो वो उसको सीख लेगा। फर्स्ट थिंग इज योर बेस शुड बी स्ट्रांग। तो लैंग्वेज केवल एम्प्लॉयबिलिटी नहीं होती, उससे सेल्फ स्टीम भी जुड़ा होता है। तो जब आप मदर टंग में अपनी लैंग्वेज सीखते हैं तो उससे कई सारा आपका एक सेल्फ स्टीम जो होता है, जो आपको जीने का एक आधार होता है, वो आपको मिलता है। तो जिंदगी केवल एम्प्लॉयबिलिटी के लिए ही नहीं है, सेल्फ स्टीम है, इंटीग्रिटी है, वो सारी चीजें आपको मदर टंग से इम्पार्ट होती हैं और जो आपको एक जीवन जीने की राह दिखाती हैं। तो आपको लोकल लैंग्वेज, आपकी जो मदर टंग है, उसको इम्पार्ट करना बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है कि पेरेंट्स मस्ट इम्पार्ट देयर मदर टंग टू देयर चिल्ड्रन एंड लेटर ऑन व्हेन द फॉर्मल एजुकेशन स्टार्ट्स द चाइल्ड will pick up language A, B, C in due course. So that is more important. This is my personal opinion.
Thank you, sir. Yes, that's very fine, very fine.
And I hope everyone agree with that, and you can see the reactions in the chat box. With this, we come to the end of this wonderful session by Amitabh sir, and I know this was a very informative, and people really realize the importance of dialect as well through this session. And with this, we request everyone to turn on their camera so that we can have a
Sir,
quick one photograph. Ashish sir, are we ready?
And apart from that, yes, ma'am. And from Aishwarya ma'am, we have another little query that as sign has multiple meanings, and there is a culmination of westernization nowadays. So, what could be a modern way to teach young mind?
साइन के तो वेरियस मीनिंग्स हैं और पर्टिकुलरली व्हेन इट कम्स टू लिंग्विस्टिक्स हम फरीनांदी सस्यूर को फॉलो करते हैं जिन्होंने साइन के साथ में सिग्निफायर एंड सिग्निफाइड की टर्मिनोलॉजी दी थी। So that we follow that the relationship between signifier and signified is arbitrary, that is not direct. So that modern definition that we follow, that I can say about the sign.
Thank you, sir. So all are requested to turn on their camera so that we may have one group photograph. Okay, thank you everyone.
Thank you, Amitabh sir. Thank you so much for joining this session. And participants will come back at 7:30 for the next session. So you can be there or
Thank you, Amitabh sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, Amitabh.
For such a wonderful session.
Thank you all. Thank you all.